In this lesson, we're going to review how to factor out the GCF. So recall how to simplify an expression that looks like this: 4a times the quantity of 2a plus 3. If you were told to simplify, I think you know that means you need to apply the distributive property, which would give you 8a to the second power plus 12a. So this line here is known as my simplified expression because it has no like terms in parentheses. But this line here that I started with is when the expression was actually factored. It was two things multiplied together. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to give you the simplified, and you have got to kind of do the distributive property in reverse to give me the factored form. So you have a factoring graphic organizer that looks like this. So the very first factoring method that you're always going to do, no matter what size the polynomial is to factor out the GCF. And GCF stands for greatest common factor. So here's a very simple example. Let's say that you have 8x squared plus 2x, and I asked you to factor out the GCF. You begin by identifying the greatest thing that goes into 8 and 2. Hopefully you recognize that it's 2, and the greatest thing that goes into x squared and x. Well, the trick is take the one with the lower variable. So that's going to be x. So my GCF is 2x, and then I divide each term by 2x. So 8 divided by 2 is 4, and x squared divided by x is x. And then 2x divided by 2x is just 1. We're going to do many more examples to help you understand this. So in the back of your graphic organizer, you have quite a few practice problems. The first one is 3x minus 15. So again, you begin by looking at both the 3x and the 15. Start with your coefficients. What goes into both 3 and 15? Hopefully, you know that 3 does. So you put a 3 out front and you open up a set of parentheses large enough for a binomial, meaning it has two terms. This is a binomial because there are two terms. You will have two terms remaining inside here if you've done it correctly. So what do? Well, you divide each of these by 3 to figure out what goes on the inside. Well, 3 divided by 3 is 1, and you're left with 1x, and 15 divided by 3 would be minus 5. This is the factored form. How could you check it? Well, you would distribute and make sure you get 3x minus 15, what you started with, and I did. Okay, let's go on to the next one. 2a cubed minus a. So look at my coefficients, a 2 and a 1. Well, the biggest thing that goes into 2 and 1 is 1, so I'm not going to divide by 1 because that never changes anything. So then I go on to the variables, a to the third and a to the first. The trick is take the one with the smaller exponent, so it would be an a to the first would be my greatest common factor. So again, I'm going to write my a out front. I'm going to open up a set of parentheses, and I'm going to divide each of these by a. So 2 divided by 1, well, that's just 2. A cubed divided by a, that's keep my base and subtract my exponents, would be a to the second. And here, a divided by a is 1. So I would have 2a squared minus 1 remaining on the inside. Please make sure that you don't drop the a out front, okay? Factored form, factored are things that are multiplied together. So those two things would produce, once multiplied, would produce what we started with. Why don't you pause the video and try this one on your own? So you begin by identifying the GCF of 2, 4, and 8. The biggest thing that goes into all three of those is 2. So put 2 out front. I'm going to open up enough space to write a trinomial because 1, 2, 3 terms, trinomial is what's going to remain inside here. Look at your x's. I have an x to the second, x to the first, and no x. Since I don't have an x in all three places, I can't pull out an x from this trinomial. Okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to divide each term by 2 to see what remains. This would be x to the second minus 2x plus 4. So this expression is factored. Number 4 has something we didn't quite see before The leading coefficient, this term in the front, is negative. We don't typically like that in mathematics, so what we do to get rid of that is we divide by a negative value. So whatever my greatest common factor is, I'm going to make it negative. All right, so now I look at the biggest thing that goes into 3 and 12, and that is 3. And the biggest thing that goes into x squared and x would be x to the first, the one with the smaller exponent. So what do? Well, we're going to divide each of these by negative 3x, which produces, well, this would cancel, and I'd have x to the first power. And then I'd have positive 12 divided by negative 3 would be negative 4, and these x's would cancel to be 1. So my answer here is negative 3x times the quantity of x minus 4. Right? Pause and you give number 5 a try. So hopefully you spot that 3 is the largest thing that goes into 3, 36, and 9. There is not an x in all 3 places, so I'm just going to divide by the greatest common factor, which is 3. So as I divide each of these by 3, what's going to remain? Well, I'm going to have an x to the second plus 12x minus 3. And there's my factored form. And this is the last practice one in the video. Try this one on your own. Okay, so hopefully you recognize that my GCF here is negative because I've got a leading coefficient that's negative, 2x to the first. Open up enough space for a trinomial, and I'm going to divide each of these terms by negative 2x, which produces x to the second plus, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, 3x to the first, and then minus 1, because a positive divided by a negative is a negative. Okay, so this is simplified. Please do some practice problems now to make sure that you've really got this.